Something changed in the Landman Season 3 trailer, and I don't think enough people are talking about it. Most fans are looking at the new deals, the new threats, and the growing tension between the major players. But the biggest story might be hiding in plain sight. For the first time since this series began, Tommy Norris is no longer fighting to protect someone else's empire, he is fighting to build his own. And that single change could make him more dangerous, more vulnerable, and more isolated than he has ever been before. Because creating a legacy sounds like a victory. But in Taylor Sheridan's world, the moment a character finally gets what they want is usually the moment everything starts falling apart. The trailer is filled with clues that Tommy's future is about to become far more complicated than anyone expected. The question is not whether he can build something successful. The question is what it will cost him when powerful people decide they want a piece of it. And after watching every second of that trailer, I think Season 3 is setting up the biggest test Tommy Norris has ever faced. The most important thing about the Season 3 trailer is not what Tommy says. It is what he does not say. Throughout the first 2 seasons, Tommy was always reacting to problems created by other people. Someone made a bad decision. Someone signed the wrong deal. Someone started a conflict that threatened everything. Tommy would step into the middle of the chaos and somehow find a way to keep the machine running. That role defined him. He was the fixer, the man who could walk into impossible situations and leave with a solution nobody else could see. But the trailer shows a very different version of Tommy Norris. This time he is not cleaning up someone else's mess. This time he is creating something from the ground up. That distinction may seem small at first, but it changes everything about the character. When you spend your life protecting another person's business, there is always a certain emotional distance. The company matters. The job matters. But at the end of the day, it belongs to someone else. If things fall apart, the loss is professional. It hurts, but it is not personal. What Tommy is building now is different. Every success belongs to him. Every mistake belongs to him. Every risk belongs to him. The trailer keeps returning to that idea without ever saying it directly. There is a confidence in Tommy that we have not seen before. But there is also pressure. A different kind of pressure. The pressure of knowing there is nobody left to blame if things go wrong. And that is why I think Season 3 is going to be the most personal chapter of Tommy's story. The trailer repeatedly presents Tommy as a man standing at the center of competing forces. On one side is opportunity, on the other side is responsibility. Those two things usually arrive together, but people often focus only on the opportunity. Tommy has spent years proving he can solve problems for other people. Now he has to prove he can lead something of his own. That challenge is much harder than it sounds. Because leadership is not really about making decisions when everything is going well. Leadership is about making impossible decisions when every available option comes with consequences. And the trailer suggests that Tommy is heading directly toward that kind of situation. What makes this especially interesting is the way the trailer frames success itself. Most television dramas treat success as the finish line. Landman has never worked that way. Success creates visibility. Visibility creates enemies. Enemies create pressure. And pressure reveals who people really are. Think about the position Tommy finds himself in now. The moment he starts building something valuable, he becomes impossible to ignore. People who never cared about him before suddenly have a reason to pay attention. Competitors start watching. Former allies start asking questions. Powerful people start calculating how his success affects their own future. The trailer feels like a warning more than a celebration. Yes, Tommy is finally building his own legacy. Yes, he is finally stepping out of the shadows. But every shot, every conversation, and every moment of tension seems designed to remind us that visibility comes with a price. And the more successful Tommy becomes, the bigger that price gets. That is why I believe the trailer is quietly setting up a season about ownership. Not ownership of land. Not ownership of oil. Ownership of identity. For years, Tommy's identity was tied to the people he worked for. Season 3 appears ready to ask a completely different question. Who is Tommy Norris when nobody is standing above him? Who is he when every decision carries his name? Who is he when the future of an entire operation depends on choices only he can make? The answers to those questions are going to define this season. Because creating a legacy is easy to celebrate when everything is working. The real test comes when that legacy is threatened. And judging by everything hidden inside the Season 3 trailer, that threat may already be closer than Tommy realizes. If Tommy's new company is the foundation of Season 3, then the people surrounding him are about to become the real source of danger. Because one thing Taylor Sheridan has always understood, better than most television writers, is that the biggest threats rarely come from strangers. They come from people who know exactly where to apply pressure. That is the detail in the trailer that keeps standing out to me. Everyone is focused on the business conflict. Everyone is talking about competitors, contracts, and power struggles. But the trailer feels like it is building towards something much more personal. It feels like Tommy is about to discover that creating a legacy is not simply about building a company. It is about protecting the people connected to it. For most of his career, Tommy operated in a very specific way. He solved problems and then moved on to the next one. There was always another crisis waiting, another deal needing attention, another fire that had to be put out before it spread. That lifestyle allowed him to keep emotional distance from the consequences. Season 3 appears ready to remove that distance completely. The trailer suggests that Tommy's new operation is becoming more than just a business venture. It is becoming a reflection of who he is. That means every attack against the company feels like an attack against him personally. Every setback becomes harder to ignore. Every betrayal becomes harder to forgive. And that is where things become dangerous. Because Tommy has always been at his best when he could think logically. He survives because he stays calm while everyone else loses control. He sees solutions where other people only see problems. But what happens when the problem is connected to something he genuinely cares about? The trailer seems determined to explore that exact question. There is a noticeable shift in Tommy's attitude throughout the footage. He still looks confident. He still looks capable. But there is also a level of determination that feels different from previous seasons. It is the determination of someone who finally has something worth protecting at all costs. That may sound like a strength. In reality, it could become his greatest weakness. Because people become predictable when they care deeply about something. They begin making decisions based on emotion instead of strategy. They start taking risks they would normally avoid. They become vulnerable in ways they never expected. The smartest people in Tommy's world will recognize that immediately. And that brings us to what may be the most important hidden story in the entire trailer. Power is shifting. Not in one dramatic moment, not through some massive event, through a series of small changes that are gradually altering the balance of the entire landscape. For years, Tommy understood exactly where he stood. He knew who held authority. He knew who made the final decisions. Even when he disagreed with those people, the structure itself remained clear. Now that structure is disappearing. The trailer repeatedly places Tommy in situations where he appears to be standing alone. That visual pattern matters because Landman has always used isolation as a signal. Whenever a character starts operating independently, they become responsible for consequences that used to be shared. And shared responsibility has a way of protecting people. Individual responsibility does not. The more successful Tommy becomes, the more isolated he may become as well. That creates opportunities for conflict from every direction. Former allies may begin questioning his choices. Business partners may start wondering whether his growing influence threatens their own position. Competitors may decide that stopping Tommy now is easier than dealing with him later. The trailer never directly confirms any of this, but it does something more effective. It creates a feeling that the ground beneath Tommy is becoming less stable with every step forward. And that feeling becomes even stronger when you consider the larger pattern of Taylor Sheridan's storytelling. His most compelling characters rarely lose because they lack intelligence. They lose because success changes the environment around them. The moment someone becomes powerful, everyone else starts reacting to that power. The trailer strongly suggests that Tommy is entering that phase of his journey. People who once underestimated him may no longer have that luxury. People who ignored him may suddenly see him as a threat, and people who respected him may find themselves competing against him. That kind of transformation does not happen without consequences. What makes this especially interesting is that Tommy probably understands some of this already. He has spent years watching powerful people navigate these exact situations. He knows how the game works. He knows how quickly relationships can change when money and influence become involved. But understanding a problem and experiencing it personally are two very different things. Watching someone else deal with pressure is easy. Living through it yourself is something else entirely. That is why I believe the trailer is quietly setting up Tommy's most difficult challenge yet. Not surviving external threats, not winning business battles, not outsmarting competitors. Learning how to carry the weight of ownership without allowing it to change who he is. Because every legacy eventually faces a defining moment. A moment where the person who built it must decide what matters more. The thing they created, or the principles that inspired them to create it in the first place. And the closer I look at this trailer, the more convinced I become that Tommy Norris is heading directly toward that decision. The company may be growing, the opportunities may be expanding, the future may look brighter than ever. But beneath all of that optimism, the trailer is planting a much darker possibility that the very thing Tommy worked so hard to build could become the thing that tests him more than anything he has ever faced before. The character I keep thinking about after watching the Season 3 trailer is not Tommy. It is the person standing just outside the center of the story. Because if Tommy is building a new future, someone else is being forced to watch that future take shape without them. And if there is one thing Landman has consistently shown us, it is that ambition and regret become extremely dangerous when they exist in the same room. What makes the trailer so fascinating is that it never clearly tells us who Tommy's biggest obstacle will be. Instead, it creates uncertainty. Every conversation feels layered. Every interaction feels like it contains something unsaid. The tension is not coming from obvious enemies. It is coming from relationships that are beginning to change. And changing relationships are far more unpredictable than open conflict. An enemy follows a pattern. A disappointed ally does not. That distinction could become one of the defining themes of Season 3. Throughout the first 2 seasons, Tommy built connections that helped him survive situations that should have destroyed him. He earned loyalty because people trusted his judgment. They believed he would do the right thing even when the right thing was difficult. That reputation became one of his greatest strengths, but reputation is fragile. The trailer seems determined to remind us of that fact. The moment Tommy starts building something for himself, the people around him are forced to see him differently. Some will admire what he is creating, some will support it. Others may begin questioning whether the man they trusted is becoming someone new. Not because Tommy has changed, but because success changes how people interpret your actions. A decision that once looked responsible can suddenly look selfish. A risk that once seemed necessary can suddenly seem reckless. A partnership that once felt harmless can suddenly feel threatening. Perspective changes everything, and Season 3 appears ready to explore exactly how quickly those perspectives can shift. The trailer repeatedly emphasizes uncertainty. Characters seem cautious, conversations feel measured, nobody appears completely comfortable with the current balance of power. That atmosphere matters because uncertainty creates opportunities for mistakes. When people feel secure, they act predictably. When people feel uncertain, they start making decisions based on fear. Fear of losing influence, fear of losing control, fear of being left behind. Those fears have destroyed more empires in Taylor Sheridan stories than any outside enemy ever could. That is why I believe the real conflict of Season 3 may not begin with a business deal or a corporate battle. It may begin with something much smaller, a misunderstanding, a disagreement, a decision that one person views as necessary and another person views as betrayal. The trailer gives us several moments that seem to point in that direction. There is a growing sense that communication is breaking down. Not completely, not yet, but enough to create cracks in relationships that once appeared solid. And cracks are dangerous. Not because they destroy structures immediately, because they grow. Slowly, quietly. Until one day the entire foundation begins to shift. Tommy has always been excellent at identifying problems in the physical world. He understands contracts, he understands negotiations, he understands how to read situations before they become disasters. But emotional conflicts operate differently. You cannot solve them with leverage. You cannot negotiate them away. You cannot fix them simply by being the smartest person in the room. The trailer seems to suggest that Tommy is about to learn that lesson firsthand. For the first time, he may find himself dealing with problems that have no clean solution. And those are always the most dangerous problems. Because eventually, every option comes with a cost. Save one relationship and damage another. Protect the company and disappoint the people closest to you. Preserve the future you are building, or stay loyal to the past that helped create it. Those choices define characters. And judging by the tone of the trailer, Season 3 is preparing to force Tommy into exactly those kinds of decisions. What makes this even more compelling is the possibility that nobody involved will be entirely right or entirely wrong. That is where Landman tends to be at its strongest. The show works best when conflicts emerge from competing priorities rather than simple good versus evil storytelling. One person believes they are protecting the future. Another believes they are protecting what already exists. Both believe they are doing the right thing. Both make understandable choices. And both contribute to a collision that becomes impossible to stop. The trailer feels full of that kind of energy. Not the energy of villains plotting in secret, the energy of good intentions moving in different directions. And sometimes that is far more destructive. Because when people recognize an obvious enemy, they prepare for the fight. When conflict grows between people who still respect each other, the damage often happens before anyone realizes what is happening. That is why I think Season 3 could become the most emotionally complex chapter of Tommy Norris's journey. Not because the threats are bigger, because the relationships are becoming more complicated. Every success creates new expectations. Every victory creates new responsibilities. Every step forward creates new pressure. And eventually, those pressures begin pushing people toward choices they never expected to make. The trailer keeps returning to one central idea without ever stating it directly. Building a legacy is not simply about creating something that lasts. It is about discovering what you are willing to risk in order to protect it. Tommy believes he is entering a new chapter. And he is. The question is whether the people around him are ready for that chapter too. Because if they are not, the greatest threat to Tommy's future may not come from outside his world at all. It may come from the people who helped him build it. And then there is the possibility that the trailer is hiding something even bigger than the business conflict, the shifting relationships, or Tommy's growing legacy. Because the more I watch it, the more I get the feeling that Season 3 is preparing a move that very few people are expecting, a move that changes the direction of the entire series. The reason I say that is because the trailer does not feel like the beginning of a normal season. It feels like the beginning of a transformation. There is a difference between a character facing a new challenge and a character entering a completely new phase of their life. Tommy Norris appears to be doing the second. Think about where he started. When Landman first introduced Tommy, he was a man whose value came from his ability to solve problems for powerful people. He was respected, but he was rarely the center of power himself. He operated around influence rather than controlling it directly. That position gave him freedom. It also gave him protection. Season 3 appears ready to take both away. The trailer repeatedly places Tommy in situations where decisions begin and end with him. Nobody is standing above him anymore. Nobody is making the final call for him. Nobody is carrying responsibility if things go wrong. That sounds empowering. It is also terrifying, because power changes people in ways they rarely notice, not necessarily by making them cruel or selfish. Sometimes power changes people simply by forcing them to make choices they never had to make before. Choices where every available option hurts someone. Choices where there is no perfect outcome. Choices where leadership means accepting consequences regardless of what decision you make. The trailer seems determined to push Tommy toward those moments. And if that happens, we could see a version of the character that has never existed before. Not because Tommy becomes someone else, because circumstances force hidden parts of his personality into the open. That is what pressure does. It reveals things. It reveals strengths people did not know they possessed. It reveals weaknesses they hoped nobody would ever see. Most importantly, it reveals priorities. When everything is on the line, people show you what truly matters to them. That is why I believe Season 3 may ultimately become a story about priorities rather than business. The business conflict is important. The power struggle is